"Come early, we're celebrating you," Dean had said. So I did. I arrived 10 minutes ahead, wearing the pale gold blouse I knew Dana hated soft, modest old. Something from before they remodeled me into the background. Dean stood near the entrance of the private dining hall, arms wide like a game show host. "There she is." He grinned and pulled me into a half-hearted hug. Then he handed me a small plastic badge. "Here," he said. "You'll need this." I read it. Limited guest. At first I thought it was a joke. Maybe they made badges for everyone. Maybe it said, "Beloved Mother" on the back. But no, everyone else had seating cards, champagne flutes, cloth napkins. I stood there holding a badge and a paper cup of water. Dana floated over, perfect, in her ivory jumpsuit, and that lipstick she only wears when there's press or power involved. She leaned close, her voice low enough for only me. "It means no food, Evelyn. House rules." Then she laughed and walked off arm in arm with her mother. Across the room, someone clicked their phone camera. Dean. He zoomed in on me like I was part of the decor. I looked around. No chair, no menu, not even a bread plate. I stood at the edge of the room like a hired driver. The lights were warm, but I was freezing. My eyes met the server's once she looked away quickly. Maybe embarrassed. Maybe warned. No one else noticed me. Or maybe that was the point. For a moment, I just watched. Watched my son toast to family values while I sipped from my paper cup. Then quietly, I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and typed a single message to Miriam: confirm freeze. Execute Plan B tonight. I slipped the phone back in my purse and smiled, small, polite, invisible. If they wanted a ghost, I would give them one. And ghosts don't sign anything. I used to believe that sacrifice would be enough, that if you gave without keeping score someday, someone would remember the cost. When Dean was 12, I worked nights at the laundromat, mornings in a diner, and afternoons sewing hems and lace into strangers' wedding dresses. I came home with raw fingers and sore ankles, but I always brought dinner. Sometimes soup, sometimes just bread, but always with a smile. I sold my engagement ring the year he got into college. Told him it didn't fit anymore. Paid the tuition in full. I told myself love was worth more than diamonds. When he got engaged, Dana wanted a vineyard wedding. I said it was too expensive. Dean said, "You always told me not to settle." I drained my savings and wrote a check for $32,000. They didn't even let me give a toast. Now here I am, standing in a corner like a forgotten extra, holding a badge that tells me I don't belong. Dana reappears with that too smooth smile. Her tone is syrup sweet, just loud enough for nearby guests to overhear. "We'll be sending some papers your way this week, just the usual stuff, power of attorney, property clarification. Formality, really." She pats my arm like I'm an old pet. I nod as if I didn't hear the venom under the varnish. Dean catches my eye across the table, lifts his glass and winks. My stomach turns. I excuse myself, step into the hallway outside the restroom, and pull out my phone. My hands aren't shaking. Not anymore. I type to Miriam, "Check the trust." "Now." She replies in under a minute, all in place. "Do you want to trigger the audit?" "Not yet." "Not here," I reply. Soon, I straighten my blouse and walk back into the party. They've moved on without me, laughing, pouring wine, passing plates I'll never touch. Let them eat. Let them toast. Let them believe they've won. Tomorrow, Dana will show up with papers, and when she does, I'll be ready. Dana showed up the next morning like nothing had happened. She didn't even knock, just strolled in, holding a cup of coffee and a manila folder. "Thought I'd bring your favorite," she said, setting the cup on the table. Vanilla syrup, no cream. Wrong on both counts. She sat across from me, crossing her legs like she owned the room. "Dean says this'll just simplify everything. We're trying to make things smoother for you, you know. Less paperwork." Fewer decisions. You deserve that. She slid the folder across the table, along with a gleaming pen. It was embossed with some bank's logo. Inside, I saw exactly what I expected. Power of attorney transfer of title for the duplex I'd rented out since 2004, and something about medical guardianship. All neat. All rehearsed. I picked it up slowly, pretending to read as if it were the first time I'd ever seen a legal document. Dana leaned back like she thought I might break into tears of gratitude. I smiled. I'll look it over tonight. She blinked, clearly thrown off. Oh. Sure. It's nothing complicated. Just sign where it says. We already filled out most of it. I nodded again, keeping my voice smooth. I know, sweetheart. I just like to read things twice. She stood, smoothing her jumpsuit. Of course. I'll tell Dean you're on board. We'll pick it up tomorrow. Okay? After she left, I waited until I heard her car pull out of the driveway. Then I opened the hall closet, reached for the worn shoebox wrapped in an old dish towel, and carried it to the kitchen table. Inside copies of every property deed, printouts of trust disbursements, my separate bank accounts, and at the very bottom, a copy of Dana's signed prenuptial agreement. She had forgotten, but I never had. I placed the folder she left on top of mine and folded my hands. Tomorrow, they'd come back expecting compliance, but I had no intention of giving them what they wanted. Because tonight, I would visit the safety deposit box they didn't know existed. By mid-morning, the truth about last night surfaced like oil on water. A neighbor who had been at the restaurant called to check on me, her voice full of awkward pity. She slipped up before she could catch herself. It was such a beautiful party for Dana's mother. Everyone was so touched you came. I hung up slowly, staring at the phone. My so-called celebration hadn't even been mine. I replayed the scene in my head, the banners, the flowers, the speeches. Not one word had been about me. I'd been a prop. The honored guest badge was just a diversion, so Dana's mother could shine while I absorbed the whispers about my limited guest status. Sympathy theater at my expense. Even my granddaughter had looked shocked when she saw me walk in. I thought Grandma moved away, she blurted before Dana yanked her back by the arm. That small voice still echoed in my head. I spent the day moving slowly through my house, straightening stacks of papers, touching the framed photo of Dean in his graduation robe. I used to think these images meant something permanent. Now they felt like evidence in a case I hadn't realized I was building. After dinner, I poured myself a small glass of water and sat at the kitchen table with my phone. I scrolled through my call log. At the very top sat a voice message from Dana sent just after midnight. My thumb hovered for a moment, then pressed play. Her voice spilled out sugar and poison mixed together. If she doesn't sign, we'll file the elder incompetence claim. It'll be ours anyway. Dean, stop worrying. She's too soft to fight back. I replayed it twice, letting every word soak into me until the disbelief burned off and only clarity remained. Then, I saved the file to a private folder, labeled simply March. When the message ended, I opened a new envelope and slipped a few key documents inside, ready for the bank in the morning. I waited until the house was quiet, not out of fear, but habit. I'd kept things to myself for so long that silence had become my partner. The phone rang twice before Miriam answered. Evelyn, she said, always, warm, always efficient. I saw your message. Everything okay? No, I said simply. But I'm ready now. We'd set it up 12 years ago, back when Dean first married Dana, and I noticed how she spoke about money, about legacy and consolidation, like I was an asset instead of a person. Miriam and I called it the fallback plan. A trust tied to my maiden name, Margaret Evelyn Hartley. 5 rental properties, 2 accounts, and a modest brokerage fund. None of it traceable to Dean or his surname. They're pushing for control, I said quietly. It's not just the house anymore. They want everything. Miriam's tone didn't shift. She was a woman who'd seen worse. It's already locked down. Do you want to trigger the withdrawal? Yes. Tonight. She didn't ask if I was sure. She knew. I'll file the hold on the joint-linked property first thing. By noon tomorrow, the only thing in your name they'll see is what you want them to. I exhaled slowly. Thank you. We hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel triumphant. I felt steady. By the time Dean and Dana noticed anything missing, they'd already be standing on sand. I walked back into the living room. Outside, the sky was deepening into night, and I let it. In the morning, I'd start shifting addresses and updating contact points. They thought I was alone, but I had built a web beneath their feet, and they'd never even looked down. Dana didn't knock. She never did. The door flew open so hard it rattled the coat rack. She stormed in, hair still half done, one shoe unbuckled, waving her phone like it was a weapon. What the hell did you do? I didn't answer right away. I finished pouring my coffee, added a dash of milk, and stirred it slowly before meeting her eyes. She threw her phone onto the counter. The bank called us this morning. The mortgage is under review. Our lawyer says the deed transfer didn't go through because your name wasn't on the clearance list anymore. I raised my cup to my lips. That's interesting. She leaned in, voice sharp. Dean's firm flagged him, said his reported assets are unstable. His bonus is frozen. Do you understand what that means? I nodded. It means your house of cards is finally feeling the wind. Her cheeks flushed. The SUV. The down payment bounced. We had to call the dealership this morning, like idiots. Did you cancel your cosign? You knew we couldn't qualify without it. I took another sip. I remember you said I owed you everything. I'm just taking that seriously now. She stared at me like I was someone she didn't recognize. Maybe I wasn't. Not anymore. Dean's furious, she said. We trusted you. I laughed once, soft and sharp. No, Dana. You depended on me staying quiet. She backed away slowly, like she'd suddenly realized she'd wandered into the wrong house. You don't know what you've done. I do, I said. And I'm not finished. She grabbed her phone and left without another word. Dean arrived before sunset, banging on the door like a man trying to break through more than just wood. I opened it slowly, and he came in without waiting fists, clenched eyes wild. You've ruined us, he shouted, pacing the living room like a cornered animal. Do you even understand what you've done? We were planning your comfort. I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. I reached into the side drawer, pulled out the USB drive, and placed it in his hand. He stared at it. What is this? I met his eyes. Your wife. On speaker. He didn't move. I didn't explain. There was nothing left to say. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the picture frame beside it tilted. I walked back to my laptop, opened the email draft I'd prepared the night before, and attached the same audio file. The subject line was clean. Just documentation attached. I sent it to 3 people, Miriam, of course. Then Dean's senior partner at the firm. And finally, Dana's HR director at the private school, where she'd been recently promoted. By 6:42 p.m., Miriam confirmed the accounts were flagged and frozen. By 7:03, Dean's name had been temporarily removed from the board. And by 8:11, Dana's profile disappeared from the school website. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even smile. I just brewed another cup of coffee and folded laundry while the silence thickened around me. At 9:20, Dana knocked, not loud, almost politely. I opened the door. She stood there, eyeliner-smudged phone in hand, voice trembling. Please, she said. You don't have to destroy everything. We were scared. That's all. It got out of hand. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I closed the door. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just final. I turned off the porch light, walked back inside, and placed the last clean shirt in the drawer. They had gambled on my silence. They never thought I'd use it as a weapon, and now it was time to reclaim what was mine. The call came on a quiet Tuesday morning. One of the tenants was relocating for work, needed to break the lease early. I told the property manager I'd handle it personally. By Thursday, I had packed what little I needed and turned in the keys to the apartment. I didn't say goodbye. No one there had ever asked why I came or why I stayed. The rental was a modest craftsman on a quiet street. 2 bedrooms, wide windows, a porch that caught the morning sun. My name had been on the deed since 2011. They never thought to look there. I moved in without ceremony, no moving truck. Just 3 boxes, my sewing machine, and a kettle. In the 2nd bedroom, I set up the old oak table and opened a folded flyer I'd kept for years. Memory quilts for healing a community project. I wasn't ready to stand in front of crowds or answer questions, but I could make things with my hands. Stitch by stitch, square by square, I began piecing together quiet stories for other women like me. Widows, forgotten mothers, quiet ones who had given everything and been left with crumbs. On Saturday, the mail arrived with a small pink envelope. I recognized the handwriting immediately, round and careful dotted E's like tiny stars. Inside was a short letter. Dear Grandma, can I come visit you? I miss you. Love, Lila. I sat for a long time holding it. Then I took out one of my note cards and wrote, Always. Love, Grandma. I added my new address, sealed the envelope, and walked it down to the corner mailbox before the pickup time. The air smelled of grass and something new. Not quite freedom, but something close. I walked back home, turned on the lamp in the sewing room, and pulled out a patch of floral fabric I'd been saving for something special. Lila would need a quilt, too, and if she came soon enough, she'd help me make it. The headlines came quietly tucked into the local business section like a footnote nobody expected. Executive placed on leave pending financial audit. They didn't name Dean outright, but the company did. His profile vanished from the leadership page by noon. Dana, for her part, tried to salvage what she could. She sent a flurry of messages to the family group chat, posted vague Bible verses on social media, and sent me a formal notice requesting emergency financial mediation. I didn't reply. The estate trustee, who was no longer Dean, revoked her access to any accounts tied to me. The shared credit line I'd once opened to help them build a future was officially dissolved. Dana's name never should have been on it to begin with. That was my mistake. And now it was corrected. Within a week, they filed for bankruptcy. In the official filing, they cited unforeseen elder sabotage. I had to read that part twice. Then I folded the paper and used it as scrap in my quilting bin. I didn't speak to the press, though I got 2 calls. I didn't gloat online, didn't hint at anything. I let the facts stand where they fell. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I walked to the public library and taught a free budgeting class for seniors. We talked about protecting yourself, about naming your own power of attorney, about quietly keeping things in your maiden name if your gut told you something was off. Some of them cried. Some of them laughed. All of them listened. At home, I stitched. I finished Lila's quilt pastel patches, a stitched letter in the corner that read, You are always welcome. I mailed it without a return address just in case Dana intercepted it. But I knew Lila would know who made it. The wind outside felt lighter now. No drama, no cameras, just the click of scissors, the hum of fabric, and the sound of something healing. The world kept spinning. And I, after everything, was still standing. Because the truth didn't need to shout. It only needed to be lived. On the morning of my 68th birthday, the sun came up slow and golden, like it had nowhere else to be. By 10, the backyard was alive with soft chatter, folding chairs in a loose circle, and mismatched plates on a long wooden table. Nothing was catered. Everything was simple. Miriam brought coffee cake. My neighbor Annika brought wildflowers in a chipped mason jar. And just before noon, Lila walked through the gate holding a foil-covered tray with a proud grin. "Lemon bars," she said, lifting the lid. "I made them myself. They're kind of crooked." "They're perfect," I said. We didn't toast. No one gave a speech. No badge. No title. Just people who had shown up because they wanted to, not because they had to. After everyone had eaten, I went inside and pulled the small wooden box from the top shelf of the hall closet. Inside it, nestled in tissue, was the badge from that dinner almost a year ago, limited guest. I had kept it, not as a wound, but as a reminder of what I'd allowed and what I'd changed. I placed it in a clear glass shadow box and set it on the mantel. Not to honor it, but to mark its ending. Later that afternoon, Lila and I sat on the porch, swing our feet, brushing the wooden floor in slow rhythm. She leaned her head against my shoulder and asked, "Will we do this again next year?" I smiled. "As many times as you want." The wind picked up softly, lifting the edge of the tablecloth, carrying the scent of lemon and sun-warmed grass through the air. I looked out at the small garden, at the friends laughing under the tree, at the home that hadn't cost me my soul to keep. And I whispered to no one in particular, "This is what real celebration feels like."